I'm constantly trying to dissolve my walls. The ones I notice, but maybe there are lots that I don't notice.
Perhaps you have gates in them, like Roman gates in them. And it was called Graham's Dyke because Prince Graham had so many skirmishes with Romans that he had a lot of Roman helmets and Roman swords, and so all his mates got on horses with the Roman swords and things, and they rode up to this wall, and the Romans thought they were a returning group of Romans and they let them through.
Oh.
So they then rode down to Hadrian's Wall, and the same thing happened at Hadrian's Wall. And they then went to Lancaster, and then they went to the Isle of Man and Ireland, and eventually the Prince Graham married an Irish princess. Because the Graham was the prince who wouldn't become king, because it's a matrilineal thing. The women became the queen and they married a king. So the princess would be the queen of the next king. Mm-hmm. But the king's son had to go and find another princess.
Like wasps?
Possibly like wasps.
It's interesting because some cultures, inheritance goes maternally, because the only person you're sure is your parent, is your mom.
That's probably what it was.
Yeah.
Yes, that's probably right. Yes.
I like the idea of gates because it means you have some willingness to let other people in, but there is still the element of control because you still want to.
Yes. And gatekeepers is a phrase for people who won't let you put your poems in magazines and things like that.
So that's a kind of wall, I suppose.
Well, that's why we use the term gatekeeper.
I like that for us writers, yeah. The gatekeeper.
Mm. I think in the anthology we're really struck by kind of the idea of thresholds, that sense that being kind of places to cross over as well as places that kind of, you know, stopped connections being made. And your climbing hills has that kind of connotation, you know, that sort of sense of, you know, is climbing the hill the obstacle, or is climbing the hill the kind of the opportunity or the entertainment?
Yeah, there's that idea is, I guess for you to get somewhere or something, you need to, there's some toil required. There's also that sense. Because it took me a long time to be comfortable in Glasgow. You know, to just get used to everything. So it needs a lot of perseverance. I know a lot of people who moved here and then moved away very quickly because they just couldn't handle it. So.
I found it funny in Glasgow how actually, like in Edinburgh, it was like you could walk, if you weren't talking to people and you were on your own, you could walk through the city and it would be like almost like everyone else was on a screen and you were watching them going by, but there was no two-way interaction. And yet with Glasgow, when I moved there and I tried to do that, I found I couldn't do that because people would talk back at you from, you know, from the sidewalks or from beside you, or ask you if you were lost or something. And I found it really unnerving. And then I found it, you know, I got used to it and I started to enjoy it. But I like, you know, it's nice going between the two of them and seeing the difference now, and like finding that they're kind of complementary in a way in my mind now. Yeah. There's two different ways of being in a place.
I always remember bus stops as places that are very significant from my early days in Glasgow, because you're never alone. If you're at a bus stop, someone will talk to you. And even if you're looking for directions, you'll know the classic story of the Glaswegian person giving you directions. They end up taking you there.
Yeah.
They go, it's this way, oh hold on, I'll just, and it's this way, hold on, I'll just take it, and then before you know it,
I guess with that sense of kind of moving to a new place, how often do you pause to think about, I suppose, like we're here at the Antonine Wall, and that sense of the kind of the sort of ancient layering of places kind of up to the contemporary period. Are you struck by that sense of a particular kind of history, whether it be mixed in certain kinds of ways or not? I suppose I was thinking about you saying about people finding it difficult. Is the difficulty very much that kind of contemporary, minute by minute, day-to-day living, or is it also to do with a kind of a sense of the history of the place and how we understand ourselves within a place as a historic place with a past?
Wow, yeah, I guess I would say that has a lot to do with it. I mean, we've just been talking about Roman soldiers writing letters home, and that sense of missing home. But the UK as whole is a home for a lot of people who are not born here or who don't seem connected here because of the historical ties. So yeah, a lot of people come here thinking that they're going to a familiar place, and so are quite struck by if they don't have a settled, comfortable time, then it's very difficult, because this, for a lot of people who have been part of the empire, they feel like it's some kind of a homecoming. Mm-hmm. And I know certainly in my school experience, we learned a lot about this country, the history and everything like this. So when we come here, I remember one of my own disappointments was finding that my peers didn't know anything about Zimbabwe.
Oh yes.
And I almost knew, yeah. I knew so much about Britain before coming here. So yeah, that really surprised me, I have to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't help us, do they?
I mean, I think that would have been true for my parents' generation, when their parents were British overseas citizens, because they were growing up in Trinidad, which was then a colony rather than independent. And when they went to England, they were told that they're going to the mother country. Yeah. It was considered the mother country. Whereas for me, I think a sense of home is much more linguistic. And when I first came to England, it seemed quite alien, for the simple linguistic reason that the southeast accents are evolving in ways that I didn't hear represented on films or in the radio. And also because I wasn't viscerally aware of the difference between Scots, Irish and English, because so many of the administrators of empire, or so many of the settlers in Trinidad, were actually Scots or Irish. I thought that places like Dundonald Street in Port of Spain, I said, well, that's an English name, it's a name from London, it's a British name, it's an empire name. Dundonald would have meant any of those things interchangeably to a Trinidadian child of about 6. It was from that island over there. The question of contemporary is interesting to me, because quite often contemporary can mean, in a shallow sense, just what's immediately everyday. So you would be considered my contemporaries because you're alive, whereas the ghosts that you're most likely not capturing on camera and which are enjoying the vantage point down to the valley would not be considered contemporary. But I believe that the memories that are in our heads are just as alive as anything else. And so in a sense, at this moment, everyone in Zimbabwe and all the Romans and people from the north of England and people from that part of Scotland where the planes don't fly, where you're from, Laura, those people are all contemporary in this moment. One of the things that fascinated me about the site at Bearsden, the bathhouse, is that's one of the sites where North African cooking vessels were found in the greatest preponderance, and there's a possibility that some of the Romans who were here were from North Africa. But I questioned myself, why was that so exciting? Have I become a racist, like the people who ask me, where are you from? So is it that anybody who is dark from anywhere, who has been here, is my ancestor? No, it can't be that. Is it because I like the food of contemporary North Africa? So I am imagining that the Romans who were here were enjoying a similar cuisine, and that would be ahistorical in so many ways. Or is it more that I like the sense that people have always travelled, that when historians try to pin down a picture of a place as being this or that, or a people as somehow stuck in the mud because they were 2,000 years ago, that's not true. And people have always stowed away on ships, or joined an army, or run away with a soldier, or done other things like that. People have always been moving, and this is more evidence for curiosity and the lack of stasis.
I think it's very relevant in our time. You know, there's much talk about migration, as if it's just something that's just emerged and so I was quite taken by that as well, because I hope it's something that people can reflect on and just think about. Yeah, we've always been moving. I think migration is a natural instinct, it's a natural action. No one stays in one place, even no matter how far you go.
But they would travel in some ways more naturally. I mean, the Romans here, they wouldn't understand aeroplanes going over, and they wouldn't be able to drive to Glasgow airport and get a plane back to. They'd be expecting to march and ride horses and take quite a long time to travel to different places. But they would still do it, because they would get there in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks if they just decided they were going somewhere. Or they might have to get a ship, to go further.
I find like when I'm going down to, I've been down to London quite a few times, and I usually take the train down, and because there's no stops, even though it's 8 hours, it actually feels more like 3 or something like that, just because I'm in a different kind of headspace, and I wonder whether it's something.
Going through Durham and Newcastle.
Yeah, you're going
whizzing past them.
Yeah, but it's still. I mean, it's still 8 hours. That doesn't feel like. It doesn't feel like 8 hours if it would feel like if I was walking, or if I was changing stations. It's the fact that you're just keeping on at the same speed, and you know that it's 8 hours. It sort of contracts the time, and I sort of wonder whether that might have been what it was like for them. Marching with that kind of like just units of travel, sort of 1, 2, 1, 2.
That sounds very Roman. Yes, a set number of miles a day, and then you stop and take off your helmet. And
but not just that, a set number of like centimetres per step and stuff. Like marching, each step being identical, so you can kind of measure out time with steps and things.
But then they'd have to stop and eat and sleep, and stop and eat and sleep. It'd be a much more complicated business.
Yeah, yes, I suppose so.
And they'd see more as they went along. You get a chance to take things in.
Yeah.
I wonder how
and
good...
they couldn't, when they rested, they actually rested and stopped moving. Whereas you can sleep on the train, for example.
I can't sleep on the train.
I do sleep on the train.
Yeah,
and I sleep anywhere.
you can fall asleep when you're still moving, but here you have to be alert and alive when you're moving.
Well, the person who drove us to school, they spent ages courting somebody who lived down the hill from them, and that was about 10 miles. And they would go. They would do their work in the day, and then they would go sort of travel all night and see, just walking, and see the person in the morning. And so walking sort of to and from work was when they would sleep, and they would actually sleep whilst they were walking because they knew the route so well. And a couple of times they walked into the ditch because they were literally sleepwalking. So, I mean, you say that you can't sleep while you're on the move like that, but
a friend of mine walked from the Isle of Wight to Cape Ross. It took him about 6 weeks, and he didn't have any money. He had a begging bowl, and he used to just stop, and he wasn't begging for money, he was only begging for food. He was only asking for food, and if people wanted to give him money, he said, no, I just want food. And they might buy him a sandwich, and he got all the way, and he met some friends on the way up. It was nice. And when he got to Cape Ross, it was a totally foggy day, so he couldn't see anything, which is just such a shame.
Yeah, come all that way.
Like goodness, sorry.
That was a while ago. I was thinking just as he was speaking there of what's unique about the Antonine Wall in the Roman Empire, which I'm insisting is contemporary with us, which is the south-facing distance slabs, which were put up at irregular intervals on the wall. You can see them in the Hunterian Museum in Glasgow. I believe there's some in Edinburgh as well. And there are pictures of the might of the Roman Empire, but what's interesting is that some of the designs seem to show Romano-Celtic contact, both unconsciously in the sense of contemporary contact with the stonemason doing a fortuna who looks more like a Celtic goddess, but also in the sense of there being memories of earlier Roman encounters. So I believe Is this correct, Sally? Have you seen them, Taona, in the Hunterian? There's one where there are people with very short haircuts who seem to be from Wales, and the reason they have such short haircuts is from an earlier Roman influence in Wales, which affected the hairstyles, and then that hairstyle was conservatively kept. But the Romans of the Antonine slabs have different hairstyles from that again.
Oh.
So the Welsh on the Roman slabs look like old-style Romans compared to the contemporary Romans who made those slabs and were going different.
Oh wow! I'll need to. I need another visit to look at that again. So that's an interesting thing, that things that people carry. You know, so people carry, even though we think of the Romans as being sort of a military force, a force of power and domination, but it's interesting that they were exchanging fashion ideas as well. We have my father's generation, they all had this hairstyle which was called the English cut, which was sort of the haircut around, your hairline would start above the ears, so you shave all the way and up here, and the hair actually starts above here. It's supposed to keep your collar clean and your neck kind of clean.
I think Gemma and Sally and I have all the same hairstyle, which is the knot cut. Yes.
And your hair's sort of wavy as well. Mine's all straight, it just goes flat when it grows.
I had mine very short when I first came to England, and the main reason I grew it was because my earlobes blistered in the winter cold. And then I thought that by analogy with ponies and other animals which thicken their coats in the winter, we could do the same.
Yeah, I've had my seasonal haircut because my hair is normally longer than this for the winter. So I wait until around this time to have my haircut.
I'm going to get mine cut again because it's just, it's kind of fine but it's oily, so it always goes just really flat as soon as it grows past about there.
Yeah, I think it looked different last May
Yeah.
when you were at the park.
I think I've had it cut since then.
Certainly,
Possibly.
you had the same face but different hair when I saw you this morning, I thought.
I would hope you had the same face.
I had the same hair but a different face. Well, that's probably not me.
You, that's right.
Just to change the conversation, do we know what we're standing behind? I know clearly it's
It's the base of the turf wall. It's 15 Roman feet wide because I just read that down there.
yeah.
Oh, you found the sign?
I did, yes. And
So it's
very
the
exciting
stone
to actually
base.
see it, yes. And
Yeah.
it goes along under there and along under there piece of it. And you can, if you follow up to there, you suddenly get to the end of the hill. It just goes downhill and then there's flat. So the rest of it's gone away. And it also goes, we'll go that way. And I'm going back to Google Earth to look just where it must have gone.
Yes.
Yeah. It's safe and nice. Because they can come through the bars to come
they
and mingle
can.
with us, but we can't go through to them. So if they feel threatened by us, they can go slip through there.
Retreat and,
Yeah.
so the plaque is not, it's interesting that the plaque is not here.
That's right,
But
it's down at
it's-
the entrance to the park, down there, another way down the road.
So I wonder, because you know, even trying to get here, we struggle to get people to know where we're going.
It's obviously been neglected and left alone, and it's only since they had this money to develop the Hadrian's Antonine Wall that they've started to do things. Obviously the locals didn't know this was called Roman Park to
Yeah,
start
no
with.
one knew that.
No. So they're beginning, and we can expect a lot better information in the next few years, I should imagine.
I think that with new developments and archaeological techniques, like the
We're
sort
to
of
find out more
photography
about
from
it.
aerial
Yes.
photography and so on, yeah, there will be more found out.
Yes.
But then the wall is actually protecting the wall.
As to stop people
This
looking
metal
at
wall.
it. Yes.
Yeah.
I do.
Falling over and breaking their ankles and suing the council and the other thing.
I do wonder how much stone just made its way into other people's houses.
In those gardens,
Yeah.
stone walls are just beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because a dressed stone is a hard thing to have.
They used to take the Hadrian's Wall, most of it was taken for building, and you can see it in all the buildings around.
Yeah, because there's a mostly 19th, 20th century village I lived in South Oxfordshire, where the houses near the older part had pieces of 16th century stone that had been raided from an abbey. But also if you go to the Orkneys, there's an interesting thing whereby if a stone croft has been too damaged to live in any longer, it's not taken down, it's left standing, but used like a kind of standing quarry.
It's standing up to the level that the cows hit it.
Yeah, and people just take what stones they can
But you were also
and
allowed
build
to
a new
on that
one.
with no planning permission because there was a site there.
What do you mean?
If you want to, if it's yours and you want to build something
Yes.
on the site where the old one was,
already got
you don't
permission for the
have
house.
to. Yeah,
Yes.
you have automatic planning permission.
But that's interesting because I've saw them not actually rebuilt, but
Yeah.
with ones built right next to them,
Ah,
using stones from them.
It reminds
same
me of
site.
that line, or the two lines in your poem, that I want you like I want a wall, I want you in bits. It
Yes.
seems that kind of, that idea of bits
Yeah.
seems, I don't know, it seems to be much easier to think that this is contemporary when it's broken up and you reincorporate it into your life in a certain kind of way. You know, that sense
Yes.
of, I need a wall like this, I don't need a turf Antonine wall anymore, but I do need a garden wall now.
Yes.
So that sense that we're living today with all of these things seems obvious in so many ways.
Yes. I had a very dark thought about time and fragments when I was looking at footage of Afghanistan being bombed, and there's footage of a family picnicking in the remains of what had been their house, which was very beautifully built of stone. And I remember thinking to myself that now the house has been ruined by a 21st century bomb. It looks really ancient because the touristic eye we're developed to have expects ancient things to be ruined and or not in use. Whereas the idea of having something that's ancient and whole and in continuous use is almost like an affront to the collective modern and conscious. It's almost like, let's ruin this if it's not pre-ruined. That's quite a dark thought, but it is what I
I think
thought.
it's like it's the feeling maybe that when something's still in use, it's kind of being seized in a way, and you feel more cynical about the people who are using it now than you would do about the people then. So it's kind of I'm not meaning you. I'm meaning I'm just thinking it through.
I mean, the people who were there 2,000 years ago can't sort of steal a bit of your garden, or the people who are here now can. So they're not such a threat when they're in the past. And of course they won't answer you back if you get them wrong.
At least
if you
you'd
imagine
hope
them
not.
wrong. Yes.
I think you can spin sort of a narrative, not necessarily true, but comforting as well. Like you can say, well, I'm taking the stone and putting it in my house because I'm honouring the memory of these people. But that might not be. I mean, they can't really come back at that because they're in the past.
I think also, even if you don't think you're honouring their memory, you are honouring their masonry skills. But because I mean, it's quite hard to get a nice bit of dressed stone, and these are well done.
But if I creep into somebody else's house and take a cake off their worktop, I'm not honouring their baking
You
skills. I'm
probably
licking their cake.
Yeah, no, but because it's a nice cake. It's like
Maybe
poetry
depends who-
plagiarism. You don't just lick any old poem. The I want you in bits thing actually came from reading about the uses of the wall, because I read about people returning to it, and even Romans apparently returning to it, and it being returned to up to maybe the 7th or 8th centuries, and there being really puzzling evidence.
This wall?
Yes, to some bits of it, and there being other bits of the wall or Roman things found much further north, and whether the plan had been conceived in one but executed at different times. But also when the Romans were leaving, they broke things up and chucked them down wells so people couldn't reuse. But also there seems to be some evidence that sometimes the Romans in the local communities got on well and sometimes they didn't. So there's some evidence of things like trading or artifacts with culturally mixed styles, and then there'll be evidence of a terrible conflict and things being seized or destroyed. So there seem to have been varying phases of not kind of either integration and disappearance or military withdrawal, but a kind of very sort of red and blue flipping yes and no contact going on.
There's a Roman camp at Callander and there's one at Breakout. There are some camps across further north, across the centre of Scotland.
Yes.
Yeah. But I don't think they were very good at hills when they got to the mountains. There's one in the Lake District, which is up a hill, and they reckon that the Romans were training them for Scotland by making them march up and down
that
hills.
makes sense.
Yes.
Because some of the Gurkhas train, I mean, there's a big kind of exchange between the Gurkhas and the Scots.
Yeah.
One of my favourite stories is of lots of Gurkhas from Nepal coming over to Glasgow to learn to play the bagpipes.
Gosh.
Yes.
Shall we break?
Yes. But not the wall.